our forefathers. On the program today, we are in the palace of OLOJA of IGBESA land in Abeokuta local government. I am your host on the program, Abdulazez is my name. It is my pleasure to welcome Alayiruwa Oba Abdulazez Oluwatoyin Akinde Adebigbade II, Ilufemiloye I, the OLOJA of IGBESA land. Kabesi. You are welcome to the royalty. And let me, on behalf of the general manager and management of Ogtv, congratulate you. Oluye I, the OLOJA of IGBESA land. Kabesi. You are welcome to the royalty. And let me, on behalf of the general manager and management of Ogtv, congratulate you on your accession to the throne of your forefathers. Kabesi, it shall be well with you. IGBESA land is ancient historical Awori land. That one I am very sure of. But let me ask Kabesi first. Your accession, your becoming the Kabesi of IGBESA. At what point in your growing up or in your life you thought about one day you'll become OLOJA? Did it ever cross your mind in the past? Or it's just that your people, when the vacancy came up, they invited you to come up?
I can categorically say that there have never been any time that I ever thought that I'll be sitting on the throne of my forefathers today. But all along, IGBESA has always been a town that I've always been thinking about coming back to, maybe after my retirement, because at the early age, I did not have opportunity to spend time at IGBESA. Most of my youths were spent in Lagos. So it has never crossed my mind that I will be the OLOJA of IGBESA land today as we speak. To be honest, it was like I was still in, if I can use this word, I was thinking I was in a cuckoo land, that I have been nominated to be a candidate to be the OLOJA of IGBESA land. So when you talk about milestone or highlight of someone's life, this throne, the accession of this throne will be a major highlight in my life. So I'm still happy as I speak. The happiness continues. That sometimes I check myself, reality check, to confirm that I'm a king today. But this is reality. I am very, very happy that I have the opportunity to give back what I've got, what God has given to me, back to my community.
One very interesting and critical part of this, your transition, is the fact that you have all along been a private sector person, a professional, and with a very blossoming career in the various aspects of finance-related field. And one will begin to wonder, how will someone who is very successful in this professional career want to possibly leave that and come to his community, and possibly most of the time he won't even be having the time to move around as it used to be. How did that come to be? What's your take on that?
Thank you very much. I'm happy that you asked that question. By virtue of my training and my work experience, I've worked in public sector. I've worked in West African Examination Council, which I believe is part of the public sector. I've worked as a lecturer. in Federal Polytechnic Ilaro. I've worked as an accountant at Lagos State University. So to some extent, and in addition, my course, being an accountant, we did public sector, accounting and other issues, although sometimes theory doesn't reflect the actual situation. But I strongly believe with your day-to-day listening to news, watching what is going on within your community, your country as a whole, after traveling to different areas you get involved in, even if you are not a politician, you follow what's going on within your environment. So those factors have shaped my mind that the adjustment that I need will not be too much to switch from a private sector environment to the public sector.
In the course of the process of accession, definitely there will be so many other princes like you from your royal house. What was the intrigues like? Or were you just a very lucky person that the entire ruling house just said, oh, okay, we are going to pick Prince Abdulazez will be chosen as our candidate, or you actually had a competition?
When it comes to putting yourself forward for any key positions within the community, I will go back to that issue of public sector, being politics, being an OBA, which I know is the third tier or fourth tier of government in Nigeria. You know, it's not an easy ride. Everybody always like to win. So, back to your question, it wasn't an easy ride. I'm sure probably if you haven't had the knowledge that it took 7 good years to sit on this throne, ever since I was informed about the nomination. So there were so many rough roads, inclusive of your own blood, that, you know, naturally always like to be in this position, which is good. But the spirit of competitiveness is what is missing in my environment today. So, and because of my love to give back to my community, I was able to, you know, shape up myself for the competition, for the rough roads I'm going to pass through before I get to this position. So it was very tough, but that's a story for another day. But I'm thankful to God that God has seen something in me that wants me to put back to this community, because that's all I ask for, to see what I can do for my fatherland. That's the reason why I'm sitting on this throne today.
You keep on repeating the fact that you want to give back to your community. That's one phrase that is very common with politicians. They will always say, yeah, I want to give back and all of that. But you are Kabiyesi Alayeluwa. You have a role as the traditional head of IGBESA. How do you think you want to do this? More so that when you look at Obaship generally now, unlike in those days where Obas were governors in the region and all of that. Nowadays, Kabiyesis are not actually given specific roles to play in governance. Now, you want to give back to your community. How do you intend to achieve this, Kabiyesi?
Thank you very much. Over the time I was growing up, I draw my motivation from role models like late Chief Obafemi Awolowo. I draw experience and motivation from someone like late Lateef Jakonde, of the former governor of Lagos State. I draw my interest from this role model, or Nosodif, this former chairman of Cabre. Those are the people I read their biographies. Those are the people I look up to. In addition to that, I am not a politician, and I don't want to be one, because I don't have qualities of being a politician. I am someone who likes to see progress. But I believe strongly that to have been or to be a leader, you have to do a lot of sacrifice. I don't get driven by money, because nowadays, looking around us, you find out that money is the main reason why many people competing for key positions. And I strongly believe that to get things done, as a leader, you need people. My own simple definition of leadership is getting things done through people. So my first task, to be able to achieve what I have in mind, the policies I want to put together to develop my community, is to have people around me to try to, if I use the word, use my skill as a former lecturer, as a teacher, to see how I can inform them about the justification of my vision to get things done, and trying to see if I can bring them along to influence their minds to see the reason where I want to get to the position I want to get to. From now, 3 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years, 20 years, by God's grace. So I have started the journey, and I believe with those I have talked to, within 2 months, I've seen evidence myself that yes, that belief, that thing's motivation that I've been talking about, I've seen the impact so far. But I'm not relying on that. I want to work harder to make sure that all issue of giving back, I want to demonstrate leadership by example and by sacrifice.
You know, EKUN has a lot of history behind it. We can't capture all the history in this program, but we'll talk a little bit about some key areas of EKUN. First, one common thing about most Awori towns is the fact that they always operate on quotas. We also have quotas in EKUN. And what are the names of the quotas that make up EKUN?
Predominantly, as you already mentioned, that Aworis, by so-called, do have quotas. IGBESA is not an exception. We have 4 quotas in IGBESA. Where we are sitting now, this location is called Idomo. To my right, we have Igbe, we have Ogono, and Osi quota. So we have predominantly 4 quotas. And each of these quotas in the past, because our forefathers are predominantly farmers, so they use the town as mainly city, and then they go out to different areas that make up IGBESA administrative area today to farm, and then they come back to the city. So you have a lot of small towns and villages that make up IGBESA. So each town in IGBESA land today is attributed or linked to IGA. So you have quotas, and then within each quota you have different IGAs. So there are so many of them. So each of these IGAs have their various farmland where they go to. So as of today, those are the areas that make up IGBESA land. You are the father of all, and perhaps you might not actually want to do a lot of emphasis on, but there's no way we will not want to get to know who Kabesi is, and perhaps his ancestral home. You tell us about which of the 4 quotas is yours, Kabesi? Thank you. By implication, where I'm sitting, this venue is Idomo. Okay. And that's where I belong. Idomo from history happened to be where the Akinde, who actually formed IGBESA land. That's where he settled. And by history, Idomo is coined out of Idi Omo, because the guy had issues a long time before he had children. So immediately he had the first one, so he decided to name this area Idiomo. So I'm predominantly from Idiomo. So Idiomo has his own quarters. One of them, it's Epodo. Epodo is where I was born. So, and so on and so forth. The same, similar, procedures happen in other quarters. So I'm predominantly Idomo, Epodo. No, put it this way. Epodo in Idomo, Idomo in IGBESA land.
All right. So I'll be glad if Kabesi will now tell us a little bit about IGBESA land itself now. We have actually captured your particular area of IGBESA. Now, as the Royal Majesty for IGBESA land, let's just have a little bit about IGBESA people. Who are they? Are they also part of the very common Olofurokufumini history, or is IGBESA slightly different? Let's know a little bit about IGBESA land, Kabesi.
IGBESA land is Awori speaking land, and today you find Awori everywhere in the West. You find Awori, some of us at close to Abeokuta. You find another Awori close to Yewa. You find Awori in Lagos State. So we're everywhere. So, but when you want to talk about the core Awori people, IGBESA is not an exception. And our language, if you speak our language, Awori language that we speak in IGBESA, is very distinct from other Aworis you find around, because it's been mixed. So we are predominantly the native Awori speaking people. Our forefathers and mothers are predominantly farmers and fishers. That is their main source of income. Although nowadays you find factories everywhere, but that is their main job. And in future, we hope to go back to agrarian environments. But yeah, they're mainly farmers. That's what they do. And from here, they explore, just like we have our forefather who formed the IGBESA land, who came from Ile-Ife. And our story is not different from other Aworis around. And that Awori is like, you have Awu, Ori. So we have gods that we consult to do anything until the advent or introduction of Christianity and Muslims. Now we still have, a small proportion of, we call them Isheshi. We have them, they still exist. Although we have more Christians now, we have more Muslims because of the influence of the colonial masters, if I can say that. So, yes, the Akinde, when he traveled after consulting his Ifa, the oracle, he's been told, put this Awo on a river, floating river, wherever it stops and disappears, that's where you should settle. So during his journeys as a farmer, as a hunter, going around, so he met some other hunters who advised him to move on, and he was able to settle somewhere very close to the sea, which they call Egbeosa. So every time someone asks him, where do you live? Who are you? Where do you live? He said, I live around the Egbeosa. So it's Egbeosa that is now formed to IGBESA.
I'm getting a little bit more into how the name actually came about, so I thank you, Kabesi, for that additional information. All right, now that we know IGBESA is Abeokuta, I don't know whether the Osa is still close by or not. Kabesi. Now, let's now look at the various developments that we have seen in IGBESA. We said predominantly in the early time, the IGBESA indigenes were farmers who will go out and farm and come back and all of that. In the course of doing this, do you have some of the prominent IGBESA indigenes at that time who, by virtue of their traveling, also settled somewhere that you can link their history to IGBESA? No.
But since I've ascended this throne, I have had information because I intend to write history about IGBESA as a whole. So it's kind of disjointed everywhere. But I know I have a lot of IGBESA people who settled at Isoro. I have a lot of IGBESA people who settled at Oshodi. I have a lot of IGBESA people who are in Lawansin. We even have in Lawansin, we have IGBESA Street. I used to live at Papa Jao. We have a street there called Arowoye Street. Arowoye Street is an IGBESA man. So we are all over Lagos State and Ogun State. I think we have the gene from our settler, Akinde, that he wants to move around to find somewhere to settle. I haven't done differently as well. I've traveled a bit myself until the call came to come back home.
No, we'll still talk about that, your travels, Kabesi, but let's, now, IGBESA has a community with a monarch at the head of the traditional setup. Definitely will have the chieftaincy, council of chiefs, and all of that. What is the setup in IGBESA in terms of chieftaincy, the traditional chiefs, the Afro-Baghi, and all of that? What's the setup in IGBESA?
Yeah, the setup, at the moment I try to design a structure based on the information and what I've observed so far. IGBESA has a structure, governance structure, but it's not being written down. And that's one of the tasks I'm taking on. We have the OLOJA sitting down here as the top of the apex. We have another group called the Afrobajes. We have the Obas. We have the chiefs. And our chiefs is subdivided into two. We have the traditional chiefs, and then we have the honorary chiefs. The traditional chiefs, based on the name, they are appointed based on tradition. We have Ajano, for example. We have Aro, for example, and so on and so forth. And then we have the other group we call the honorary chiefs. Those ones are based on those who are contributors, expert groups into the community. So if I want to say I want to set up a committee on generating internal revenue for IGBESA, then I can look at that pool of experts and put them together and form a committee. So under the traditional chiefs, we have the traditional chiefs are predominantly responsible for each of the quarters, broken down into the IGAs that I mentioned. So under that, and I have told you about the farmers who like to travel far away to do their farming. So each of these small towns now, we have baales who are looking after these each of this area. And they are expected to report to the traditional chiefs who is responsible for them. So that's the structure we have. And the traditional chiefs are closer to the ground, if I say the ground, to the people. So we have a structure there. So that's the way the structure looks like. So we're trying to improve the communication line so that it's part of what we need to do to be able to achieve the policies that we have set.
These days, you do hear people say Lusada, IGBESA. And I begin to wonder, what is the relationship between Lusada and IGBESA? In fact, some people are gradually possibly referring to IGBESA as Lusada. Is that another historical name from IGBESA, or how did that come to be?
Thank you very much. There is we have a map, which if you go to Augustine lands,
yes,
you find IGBESA, the map of IGBESA administrative area. You find it there. There is no town called Lusada.
Okay.
It happened to be a contractor who possibly worked on Aton IGBESA Agbara Road. As at today, since I've ascended the throne, I've put a kind of information out to everybody that we don't want to hear Lusada anymore. It has to be Obadishola Market, Boko area. That area called Lusada is Boko. And Boko is also broken down. Orile Boko and so on and so forth. So there is no town called Lusada. It's a name of a late contractor who worked there. Maybe because we've been lazy to call Boko, then it's called Lusada. So I will decide not to give you a fine, because there's a fine to call Lusada now. You're likely to pay a cow as a penalty.
I'm just curious, that's why I asked the question. Thank God you have been able to put it in perspective. And I'm very sure through this program also, many people will get to know that Lusada is just the name of the contractor and not the name of the community. Thank you, Kabis, for putting it. It's still the reality coming to you from Ogtv in Abeokuta, and we are in the palace of the OLOJA EKUN of IGBESA, Alailua Oba Abdulazez, Oluwatoyin Akinde. We have heard from him a bit about the history behind IGBESA. We have also heard from him the chieftaincy structure of this great ancient Awori town. In the second half of this program, perhaps we'll be dealing more with the personality of Kabiyesi himself. He's a man who has actually traveled far and wide, and he will tell us the transition from being a successful traveler to a community head where perhaps his movements will be restricted. Don't go away, we'll be back shortly.
Yes, I got to know OLOJA EKUN, as I said, closely about 8 years ago. But I've known him for more than 40 years before he traveled out. He's somebody who's well-read, well-traveled, well-connected, and he's passionate about IGBESA. Very, very passionate to a fault. He believes the way things were being done before he even traveled, and when he traveled and was still coming back home, what he's meeting, was not what he expected. And ever since he ascended the throne, he has proved that truly he wanted to bring about change. And that is what motivated somebody like me and many other people, especially the young folk, to want to partner with him to take IGBESA to the next level.
He doesn't hear a side talk. He doesn't look anybody's eye before he talks. He will tell you the truth. If you like, take it. If you like, you don't take it. And he started praying, started praise that whoever does well will receive well. Pleading for us all the time to love each other. Let's love yourself. You love somebody like yourself. And that's what it's by teaching us. And it's telling us to be educated. Because if not because of this education, he may even have the knowledge more than that, but may not be there. There's some people who have that knowledge, but you cannot get the education. There's no, if you don't have education, there's no knowledge. And knowledge is power. And since has been here, everybody in the community, they are pleased, they are happy, and they are praising. And I pray to God that they are just started.
He has changed the tune. He has changed the tune entirely. He believes in, rule of law, love, and as a matter of fact, being firm and consistent. He is somebody who believes in the development of the area and development of the people. And that's why we too are so happy, and we've been working hand in hand with him to see that, the EKUN potentials are brought to light.
He has been demonstrating greatness that is ahead of us. He has been meeting people from all walks of life, listening to them, receiving counseling, and pronouncing words of wisdom. He has been preaching unity, 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 cooperation, cooperation, brotherhood. That if we are all one, nothing is impossible to achieve. We pray that he will continue to rule us in good health. IGBESA has a lot of potentials, and we have an Oba, a member of the Ogun State Council of Obas, a member of Yewa Traditional Council. He has a lot of promise for the development, progress, and the work of IGBESA. We pray God to grant him good health, long life.
Welcome back. It's still the royalty, and we are still at the palace of the OLOJA of EKUN land, over Abdulazez, Oluwatoyin, Akinde. We've been talking with a professional to the core. Apart from his academic success, he's also professionally successful gentleman, a chartered accountant, a chartered taxation expert. He has so many of these added to his profile. And since we are not after the profile of this program, I will leave that where I have actually kept it. Kadis, welcome back to the program. Before we went on that break, you told us a little bit about IGBESA and all of that. But there's one aspect of IGBESA we have not really talked about before I go to your personality, and that has to do with the culture of the people of IGBESA. What are the major cultural activities that are celebrated in IGBESA? What do we have in IGBESA that anytime you see them, you know that, okay, this is from IGBESA, one of the major Awori towns?
We have various times we do carry out these cultural dances. We have a gugu, we have a kelede, and then we have these major events, which is done maybe occasionally or yearly. It's Woro and Peke. They are more of dances they talk about, like the Woro they talk about. If you have ills that a particular family is done in the society, they kind of hear it out, and there's some just to bring a shame to that family. It's just a kind of preventive measure for other people not to do similar things. So, but that's done late in the evening. They sing, they talk about you, you know, something like that. During that time, then we have this Gelede. Anytime you see Gelede, that's the one I love. The Gelede dance.
As Kabiyesi, at one time being a Gelede before, have you actually mounted the costume of Gelede before?
As somebody who is young and who is curious,
Yes.
I attempted, but it never worked.
Okay.
I attempted Gelede, I attempted the Gugu, but they didn't allow me. Even when I went to Lagos, they do Eyo. I also wanted to do that as well. They didn't allow me. Maybe they found out that I didn't have qualities to perform.
Or perhaps it's another way to actually preserve the sanctity of what has now become your ascension, because a Kabiyesi will not do any of those. Maybe at that time, they were actually telling you indirectly that this is Kabiyesi in you. Maybe you didn't know that.
You are right, it could be. And I just noticed that I tried all those cultural activities, but maybe God was just trying me to make me curious to know if it comes to today, I will know how to adapt to that environment. Yes, we have all those cultural activities that, you know, predominantly tell you that this is from IGBESA, although it's been polarized now by other Awori people. But from history, we know that Gelede has been taken from IGBESA to another town. That is for another day. But I think most of them originated from IGBESA land.
Yeah. Quite interesting. Before you ascended this throne, you are who you were at that time. Will you tell us a little bit more about your growing up, your primary, secondary? Were you also somehow, some sorts, rascally like the young boys will always be? I don't know how many times you were sent on errands and you had to go and play football and all of this stuff. Can you just share some of these things with us?
Thank you for reminding me of my youth.
It's very important at this point.
It all started when I was very young. After my school age, I think I only spent about 1.5 years during my school age in IGBESA, and that's what makes it interesting to come back home. I was waked out late in the night without the knowledge of my mom to Lagos, and I just woke up and found myself in Lagos, and here I am. You know, ever since I was young, when I go to school, I hardly come back home early. I always like to stay back, play football, play around. So I'm getting to a new environment, you know, thinking that I was going to go to school. It was a different school. It was Quranic school. Yes, where you have to study Quran, and then you got flogged every now and then if you don't read your Quran properly. So I graduated a little bit. Well, that's with my uncle, who happened to be an Alhaji. So he had a Quranic school. So I wasn't going to school for almost about 3-4 years. And my house seemed to be close to a school. In those days, you have high-rise schools, and where food is being served.
Where is this school you're talking about?
It's in Lagos, Ebute Elefun, if I can remember.
Oh, okay.
Ebute Elefun. And then the school is in Sangros.
Oh.
So I have to walk from Ebutelefu every day to Sangros to go to the Quranic school, because that's where the Quranic school was. And then residential was in Ebutelefu. So that Ebutelefu, the school is just a wall. There's just a wall separating my house and the school. And I can see children playing during breaks, having food. So, but it's not within my control to do anything. So I was able to focus on studying my Quran. And I got to a stage, I was promoted to be a teacher myself. So where the Quranic student will have to come to me, read. Once they finish one chapter, I present it to the Afar, and they will say, okay, this guy can move to the next chapter now. So, and then I started doing Arawasi.
That's interesting.
Day and night, you know. So interesting, yes, very interesting.
Yeah.
So I bet I will call it today that it was a phase, which was interesting. And then my mom came around, saw me, and then decided to take me to Mushin, Lagos, from Butiru, Elefu to Mushin. And you know Mushin being the type of area. So I got to Mushin I got to Mushin. I spent about 2 weeks, and then off, I had to live with my late brother, who happened to be, who was working at the prison service in Kirikiri. So I lived there with him, and then I was able to go back to school. So I went back to primary 3. So I jumped primary 2. I went to primary 3, and I was lucky to catch up quickly in terms of my studies. While I was at school, the school is called Awori Ajeromi Primary School. Yes, that's in Kirikiri. Yes, and you know Kirikiri is best known for prisoners. So it was there, but I was able to adapt quickly, and I was accepted because I play football. So, and during my very first game, after the break, and when they saw me, the way I played, that gave me a lot of friendship, and that's how I was accepted. So, and I represented the school playing football. I represented the school doing athletics. I represented the school in what's it called, Christmas Carol. Because I love to get involved in so many social activities. So I was able to finish from there, and then back to Mushi. I get admission to a school in Mushi. I get admission to Zumratu Islamiyya, where you have this Haruna Lirica. Remember Haruna Lirica? Yes, but unfortunately I couldn't afford the deposit. So I stayed home for 1 year, and I was lucky to find a private school who happened to, it was formed by one ex-politician who was a political prisoner who my late brother met. So he had a school at Egbe. It's called Lincoln Secondary School. So I was able to, because lack of fund, so I wrote the exam. I was lucky to, pass very well, and then they awarded me a scholarship to go to the school. I got to the school the first day at assembly. 3 of us were called out for those intakes, and then we were, applauded that we were on scholarship. We started the school. The scholarship did not turn up. There was no scholarship. So I struggled the first year with no money, and we're still playing football a lot, and I was thrown out. First time in second year. So I was at home, and then I decided, not sitting down doing nothing, I decided to, I had a friend who we played football together, who was not going to school, but was learning electrical work. So I decided to join him. And then I decided to join him his father happened to be a military man. So close to, there's a military zone near Yabatek, at the back of WAEC.
Yeah.
So,
Sit there.
you see there?
Yeah.
Okay, so I worked there for a while, and I learned about this technical school behind Yabatek as well. So I decided to apply, to study electrical work.
Without what I would call direct secondary education. All this while you've been in, out.
Exactly.
What an irony of fate.
Exactly. And I got admission to the technical school, and all of a sudden I was preparing to go, and a friend of mine, whom happened to be a goalkeeper, Oladimeji is the guy's name, and he knew me while we were Form 1, my playing, because we always play till evening before we go home. And then you have approved schools who compete in principal corps. I'm sure you're aware of that in Lagos. So we were in private school. So one of the private school principals donated a cup called Akinde Cup. So my school, registered for that competition, and then they were looking for players. So this Oladimeji, who happened to be a friend of mine, although we were keeping in touch while I was at home for about 3 years. So
3 years.
3 years. So he recommended me to the coach, and then they came to my house to ask me to join them, and they said I should see the principal of the school. And luckily, the principal happened to be one of my teachers when I was in Form 1. He's been risen to position of the principal.
Okay.
So I got to his office, and then he told me, he said, if you can play for us, and then we win this cup, I'm going to give you a scholarship. So I was wondering, I'm not Pele.
How can you not be the only
How can I be the only person that will help you to
win a cup?
Yeah, but I just nodded and I left. And the next day, I packed my bags. I walked all the way from Papajao to Egbe because I was so desperate to go to school. So I got there, soaked in the rain, and then there we go. What happened? We started the competition, and there was this evening standard news that just came out then. So every time we play at the back page, you find
Sports stories.
sports stories, and my name kept popping up.
As this Akinde.
Yes. So score few goals, and I get popular. And anyway, we were lucky. We won the cup.
And you also won the scholarship.
I also won the scholarship.
Oh, what a very great and lucky story.
Yeah, so that's how I've been able to finish my secondary school. So I jumped from 2, I jumped from 3, I'm part of Form 4.
Okay.
And God, the school side, was able to, pass a little bit.
That's even more than double promotion.
It was double promotion. So because I said I didn't want to go back to start from Form 2 because all my mates were already in Form 4.
Now, Kabezi, so that we maximize the little time we have left.
Yeah.
You have BA, you have MBA and all of that. Briefly about that. Where did you, was it, how easy was that? If you had all those kind of tough beginning and they are still able to cope, jumping one class and still coping with the next one and all of that, and you got your BA, MBA and all of that. How easy?
It wasn't easy, but like I said earlier, my motivation came from successful people. I tried to read their biography a little bit, and I see each of them has stories.
Okay.
And I felt then that mine was not an exception. And I believe to attain any high position, then I realized you have to have education. So despite all odds, I put in my best to make sure, even if I had to repeat the exam 5 times, I was hell-bent that I was going to do it. And that's inner motivation and not giving up. That's how I've been able to attain all those qualifications.
Now, as royal father of IGBESA land, in Yoruba land, if you come in as a monarch, you'll be thinking about bringing additional glory or something. What's your own likely position on this?
Thank you. My position, no, I'm on a camera, but my position is very simple.
Okay.
I do not intend to basically any woman because I believe in focus. I have something in mind to achieve in this new career, as I can see it, this new challenge. And over time that I've been growing up, I see few distractions. So I do not intend.
You will use this program to pass a message to your subjects, home and in diaspora.
Over the time I've been, my playing career, where I've lived with different types of people, all walks of life, where I used to live before I ascended the throne. I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy working with people. So developing a relationship is very easy for me. So my first task that I did was to make sure I have good relationship with my chiefs. Because, like I said earlier, leadership is getting things done through people. Leadership is sacrifice. Leadership is ability to listen to people. That's I've put in myself that those are the things I need to do. And one of the things I observed, and I've been preaching to my subjects ever since for the past 2 months, saying that there is lack of respect for authority in my community. There's lack of respect for elders. People don't love each other. I've seen and I've had a series of cases where I realized that there's a breakdown in the community. So my preaching to them is that let's come together. Let us respect our elders. Let us listen. Let us respect authority. Listen to your king, because I see it every day that people don't, even including the obas, including the ballets, they don't listen to you, which is a big, big concern. So my preaching to everybody is you've got to learn to respect. You've got to learn to love each other. That is the premise. That is what I'm working on. And I will never stop working on that.
Yeah, Kabisi, I must thank you for that very encouraging words and for also saying it the way it is. Because if you know where you're coming from, then you definitely will know where you're heading to. And my prayer for you, Kabisi, that the Lord will do this with you. And I also pray that you continue to enjoy the cooperation of the chiefs and the entire community. I couldn't get to ask you what the relationship between IGBESA community and the corporate world is, but I know from what you have said, it should be cordial, and we'll just leave it at that. Some other time we will have opportunity to still ask you. So Kabisi, I want to thank you so much for being on this program. We pray for peaceful reign and long life, Kabisi. Thank you so much. That's where we're going to drop the curtain on today's edition of The Royalty. We have been with Kabisi Alailua of Abdulazez, Oluwatoyin, Akinde, the Arabic Bade II, Ilufemloye I, the OLOJA of IGBESA land. He has told us much about IGBESA land, its history, its culture, and he has also told us his vision for this great community, and it's our prayer that his reign will be peaceful in this community. Until when next I come your way on this program, I leave you in the hands of Almighty God. Bye-bye.